episode 107 of Board Game Blitz, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network and a podcast about all things board games that you can listen to in less time than it takes to figure out how many games there are about trading in the Mediterranean. Board Game Blitz is sponsored by Grey Fox Games. This week, we're talking about our top 5 board game themes. First, we discuss a couple games we've played recently, the Ravensburger Escape Puzzles and Slay the Spire. Then, we go through our top 5 board game themes. And now, here are your hosts,
Ambie
and Crystal. One quick announcement before we hop into the main part of the episode, and that is that we've got the Virtual Con and Dice Tower Summer Spectacular coming up very soon. We are not 100% sure what all of the things we may be doing during those events are, so make sure you are following us on social media because we will be posting on, especially Twitter. Twitter tends to be a little bit easier for lots of little informational bits. That's just at Board Game Blitz on Twitter. The one thing that we can say for sure is that I am going to be doing a top 10 list with Tom, Z, Paula Deming, and myself, and that is on Wednesday, July 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, on the Dice Tower. That will be a live top 10, and we are doing our top 10 games from 2010, so 10 years ago. Top 10, wow. 2010, 10 years ago. I'm excited. There are a couple of picks on my list specifically that I think not a lot of people play often or even ever, so I'm excited to share
true
that.
Of a lot of 2010 games, actually.
Honestly, 2010, here, this is a little spoiler, not for my list, but like 2010 was not a super great year for games. I don't think, there are some gems in there, but like when you look at the large list of games, like there aren't tons and tons and tons of wonderful games on that list, so it'll still be a lot of fun to talk about our top 10 faves, though.
I still haven't been playing that many board games recently, but
a pandemic will do that to you.
Yeah, but I have been doing some puzzles, which are kind of board game adjacent. So Ravensburger, which is a company it's a board game publisher that makes Strike.
That's the only thing that matters, yeah. Clearly.
But they also make jigsaw puzzles, and they're pretty good jigsaw puzzles. They stick together pretty well and stuff. So they're one of the companies that I approve of with jigsaw puzzles. But they made this series of escape puzzles. So it's kind of like an escape room mixed with a jigsaw puzzle. And I got a couple of them. I have Witch's Kitchen and Submarine. So each puzzle is themed differently. They have a picture. So the jigsaw puzzle is a picture of something. And so like Witch's Kitchen is like, it looks like the inside of a hut with a bunch of little potions and stuff everywhere. And like black cats and stuff. I don't remember everything. So the way it works is there's a jigsaw puzzle. So you do the jigsaw puzzle and then it has a picture that doesn't exactly match the cover of the box, but it's similar. And then after you solve it, there's a bunch of different puzzles, not jigsaw puzzles, but there's a bunch of different like logic puzzles and stuff, kind of like an escape room, but it's just on the 2-dimensional picture. So like you look at something and it might be like a word puzzle or a number puzzle. All of the answers are numbers. So, but there's something that you do. And there's like one of them, it had 8 mini puzzles and the other one had 6. So I'm not sure. There's a bunch in the series, so it's probably similar for all the other ones. And then after you do all those puzzles, there's a final meta puzzle using the answers from those puzzles. So I enjoyed it. I did it just by myself. I like jigsaw puzzles though, and I think first it's a jigsaw puzzle and then it's an escape puzzle. So if you don't like jigsaw puzzles, this is definitely not for you. But if you do like jigsaw puzzles, like me, then it's basically a jigsaw puzzle with a little bit of bonus at the end, with simple type escape room games, kind of like Exit, but simpler, and like because it's only a picture that you're using, you're not cutting up anything or folding anything, or there's nothing like that. So there's less flexibility with what the puzzles can be, but it's still fun. I like that anyways. And so I enjoyed the Ravensburger escape puzzles. Some of the puzzles were like a little confusing, but they have a hint system online, so you can just go to their website and there's hints that help. So if you're not sure, you're stuck, it'll like tell you. I think it gave you a couple hints and then the answer. I'm not sure if there's spoiler tags though, so you might just see the answer if you're looking up the hint. but yeah, so if you get stuck, there's the answers. So that was Ravensburger escape puzzles. I did the Witch's Kitchen and Submarine. There's a bunch of different ones. I'm not sure how many they have, but they're probably mostly available. So if you like jigsaw puzzles, check them out.
They sound really neat, and this feels like something that, like, if you like escape room games, but your, like, family members maybe aren't quite that into the hobby yet, I feel like you could almost, not trick them, but, like, kind of be like, okay, so we're just gonna do a jigsaw puzzle, come here, Grandma, and everybody get together, and oh no, we have to solve a mystery now, too, like, have fun. Also, like, when you finish a jigsaw puzzle, like, definitely there's that feeling of satisfaction, but then I think there's a little bit of sadness, too, because it's over. So this kind of, like, you put the thing together, and then you get to do a little bit extra, so that feels nice.
Although if you don't like that extra part, then it might be frustrating.
Well, I mean, it's not like you have to do it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So if you want to just put together a nicely made jigsaw puzzle, go for it.
Oh, but another thing, if you only want the jigsaw puzzle, the edges of the pieces are all, they all fit together to themselves. So normally all the pieces are different, so, like, there's a unique space where it'll fit, but because of the way the meta puzzle works, the edges are all just two different shapes other than the corners. So any edge piece will fit, like, anywhere else that has that same shape, kind of.
Interesting.
So it's a little harder, because normally you do the edges first, right? And then it's hard to tell where exactly they meet up. You have to do it just by the color and, like, matching everything. So that's
so
harder. Potentially
potentially not very colorblind friendly then in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting, though. Well, similarly to you, I am still living in a pandemic world, which involves less board gaming, which, you know, it's sad to some degree, but I've also been exploring some other stuff, which includes more video games. And I had been hearing people talk about a video game that came out in 2019. Ever since it released, people have been raving about Slay the Spire. But the thing that everybody said is it's basically a deck building game. And I tend to not enjoy deck building games. There are exceptions to that rule, but for me, it's not a genre of game that I gravitate towards. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to get it, whatever. Well, pandemic hits, and it goes on sale for like 33% off, and I cave. So Slay the Spire is a roguelike deck building game. Roguelike is a pretty niche video game term, but it's games that are basically usually like a dungeon crawl, and the levels are procedurally generated, and there's turn-based gameplay. I don't play a lot of roguelike games. It's not a genre of video game that I tend to gravitate toward. So we're hitting all of the things that I don't typically do in this game, and yet, oh my gosh, it's so fun. So in Slay the Spire, you're literally basically traveling up a tower, essentially, to slay the spire, hence the name of the game. You choose one of 4 characters, and you go up all of the floors that are procedurally generated, battling enemies and bosses in turn-based combat, and all of your attacks and defense and spells and abilities are all a deck that you are continually building as you progress through the tower. So obviously your deck starts off very simple with some basic attacks and defense cards, and then as you beat more bosses and ascend higher, you get to add more cool stuff to your deck. And there are multiple acts that you can travel through. There's, again, 4 characters that you can choose from. You have to unlock content, though, and I haven't unlocked all of the characters yet, so I'm still working on that. It is just really mechanically solid, and everything is very easy to understand. One of the things that I love about this game over a lot of other card-based games, and again, the video game format helps here, is everything is defined all of the time. So what I mean by that is when you have a card in your hand, when you hover over that card, if it has a term on it, then there will be a little box to the left or the right of the card that defines that term for you. And if there are multiple terms, they're all defined. So every time you pick up a card or look at a card, if you aren't 100% sure what the things on it mean, it just tells you right there. You don't have to go searching for information or looking up things, or like I tend to forget, you know, if a word only comes up occasionally, I won't remember. I'm like, what does, you know, mystify mean? I just made that up, but like I won't remember something, and it's literally right there. It's so easy. And so I'm bad at deck building games. I'm bad at like comboing cards together. I do the thing where I should play one card first, and then I accidentally play a different card first, and then I look and I'm like, oh, I should have played this one first. So I'm not good at optimal play strategy a lot of the time, but it's still really, really fun. The animation is nice looking, pretty simple, but like really clean, and the characters are cool. I don't know. I just really like it, and I think I just wanted to talk about it because I feel like there might be other people like me who tend to kind of shy away from deck building games or even roguelike games, and this one I think is more approachable than most. I don't know how far I'll progress in it because, again, I'm bad at this genre, so at some point I might just not be able to progress. But honestly, I feel like I'm already learning a lot, even having only been playing it for a little while. So cool. You have a Switch, Ambie. Does this seems like something you would potentially enjoy?
Maybe, but when I've played games, like video games that are like board games before, like I haven't really gotten into them or enjoyed them as much as other people. Like I played Hearthstone before, and like I never really got into that. So yeah, I haven't really been interested in trying it. And there are so many other games I have that I haven't played.
That's always true. It's weird, even though this one has a lot of mechanical similarities to board games, it feels more like a video game than a board game to me. I would actually liken this kind of to, even though the mechanics are very different, I would liken this to when I play One Deck Dungeon solo. So One Deck Dungeon is dice rolling, dice manipulation, and dice allocation. So it's very different, but you're still fighting enemies and progressing through a thing. This kind of gives me a similar feeling to that in the way that I enjoy it, even though the mechanics are different. So, yeah. So that is Slay the Spire. It is available on PC, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation. And it's coming to Xbox One. Oh, and I think the iOS version just released, but I've heard that there might be issues with that. So if you want to get it on a phone or tablet, maybe look into that before you download it. But honestly, that's really neat that you can just get it on your phone too. So, and it is published by Humble Bundle. We've said it 1,000 times, Ambie. People love lists. They do.
Yeah.
It's just a universal truth that we can't get away from, and I don't want to get away from it because I like making them. So today we are going to talk about not specific games per se, but our top 5 themes in games. And you and I kind of approach this a little bit differently. So do you want to kind of explain how you made your list?
Yeah, so I made my list not necessarily themes that exist in games, but a lot of them do. But it's a list of, if a game has this theme, then it'll make me want to look at it just because of the theme. If it also has mechanics that I like, then I'll like it, but not necessarily.
I mean, I think it goes without saying that nothing is universal. Like, just because I say I like this theme does not mean I'll like every game ever that has that theme. So.
Yeah, but like I didn't go with games that I mean, like, there are themes. There are a lot of games that I like that tend to be certain themes, but I didn't go with that because I don't necessarily like them because of the theme. So it's where a theme is what makes me look at the game. So that's what I went with, or tried to think of. Yeah.
And mine, I kind of did what you didn't do to some degree, is I picked themes that generally I tend to like a vast majority of the games with that theme. Obviously exceptions, exist everywhere, but when I think of these themes, the majority of games that come into my mind are games that I really, really love. So let's hop into it with number 5.
My number 5 I called survival. Because, I was thinking of types of games that I like, and I like engine building type games. And so I was thinking like a game where you start out with very little and then you're building up trying to survive. So one example is Robinson Crusoe. Like you're surviving on a desert island. So not like zombie survival or anything. It's like more like you're on a desert island just trying to survive, trying to live. So, I couldn't think of any other games that I've played with that theme specifically. But I guess like farming games are kind of a subset of that.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Or, I mean, in theory, there could be some like game where you're on a spaceship or something like that hasn't been made yet, where you're just trying to kind of scrape by, like you've been. Yeah, I
feel like something like that would have been made already. I just can't think of any.
I don't think so. Like kind of like floating out in the middle of like what's that Sandra Bullock movie? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't know.
But the board game.
Yeah, so that's my number 5.
My number 5 theme is nature. So there are actually a pretty large amount of board games that involve nature in some way, but a lot of them I tend to really enjoy. So some games that I kind of came into my mind were things like Herbaceous, Lotus, Reef, Wingspan, and obviously nature could lump animals in here too, and I thought about putting animals on my list and didn't. I think it kind of encompasses animals to some degree, but I don't think all animal games are nature games, and obviously not all nature games are animal games, but something like Wingspan feels a little bit more nature-based than just pure animal-based, because you've got nests and eggs and other things that are not just the animals themselves. Nature just feels very chill and calming to me. A lot of these games tend to be low interaction and you're not messing with other people's stuff as much, so I think they tend to be less stressful for me, which is why nature-themed games are my number 5.
My number 4 is another one that I can't think of a game for, but it would be cool if it existed.
This is a call to arms. Game publishers, make a game with the theme that Ambie's about to say.
Yeah, so this is crafting, or like arts and crafts. So as my hobbies, I like making stuff, but so I know there's patchwork, but that's like, doesn't really feel like you're making a quilt.
Yeah, patchwork does not feel like quilting.
I was thinking it would be cool to have like a heavier game, like a strategic Euro, kind of like a Vital Lacerda game or something, where you're crafting something. So like there's Pret-a-Porter where you're making dresses and stuff, making designs, but like I like crafting but a bunch of other types of things, like making stuffed animals or making, I don't know. But I think that would be neat.
You know what would be neat is something kind of like that Netflix show Nailed It, where people, like amateurs, are trying to recreate like really fancy cakes or whatever from Pinterest, something, but like if it was crafting themed, so you're kind of trying to like popsicle stick and glue together, not literally obviously, but like within the
dexterity game.
Like you're collecting specific like random ingredients and then you have to somehow turn them into something neat.
Yeah,
I would get down in that on that. I like it.
So that was my number 4, crafting or arts and crafts heavy Euro.
My number 4 is mystery. So this one didn't pop into my head immediately, but when I started thinking more about it, I think I really enjoy, not necessarily, like I enjoy solving puzzles, but that feels like a separate thing to me. Mystery is kind of more spooky. And it can involve puzzles, but it doesn't always. Just having to figure something out, either in the midst of a game or at the end of a game. So escape room games definitely fall into this category, but to me something like Betrayal at House on the Hill kind of does too. Or even like Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Some, social deduction games would fit here. Or Mr. Jack, where it's a 2-player strategic game, but you're trying to suss out information. I like a mystery. I like having unknown things that I kind of have to search for and work at and try and get.
Yeah, I also like mystery. But I was thinking, I think the reason I like it is more of the puzzle like mechanics and stuff, so I didn't put it as a theme.
No, that makes sense. And I really enjoy puzzles as well. I consider just doing puzzles as a theme on here, but I think mystery is a little bit more all-encompassing for me. So that is why it is my number 4.
My number 3 is cyberpunk. So cyberpunk is like sci-fi dystopian future. Some examples of that are Netrunner and The Resistance. So Netrunner is a now discontinued card game that I really used to like. But I played it too much and it was hard to keep up with it. But like the theme was really neat. There's like these corporations, and then there's these hackers hacking into the corporations and trying to like steal stuff from them, and that was really neat. And then in The Resistance, it's a social deduction game with like spies or the Resistance and spies. Yeah, so but I play The Resistance Avalon, which is like Merlin themed, but we still call them spies. Like I like the theme of the original one better, so I just pretend it's still cyberpunk themed.
So what about the cyberpunk theme appeals to you?
I'm not sure. Like I just like the characters are cool. Like it seems cool being like futuristic hacking type Resistance, and like I also played the RPG Cyberpunk 2020. Well, we played it for like 2 times because we couldn't like schedule it. But just like the story of being in a futuristic, well, I like sci-fi in general, and then it's like more specific. I like dystopian sci-fi as well, and then it's cool just computer stuff and pretending like you're really good at hacking.
Awesome.
When you're not. And so that was my number 3, cyberpunk.
My number 3 is art. And obviously all board games utilize art, but I'm talking about games that are themed about art. So things like Starving Artists or Sagrada or Modern Art, or Kanagawa, Belrati, Duplik, which I'm just going to say this out here. I know that we have a few people that listen to this podcast. If anybody has a copy of Duplik lying around that they don't want, please hit me up on Twitter, because I desperately want a copy of this game. My good friends, Mason and Megan Weaver. Mason, you may have heard on the 5x podcast, taught this game to me at BGG Con a couple of years ago, and it is so much fun. I love it, but it's not a game that I could easily print and play, I don't think. So it's Duplik. I'm just going to use my platform here to say, if you have a copy of that game, hit me up, please. I love it so much. But yeah, art, it kind of, I think, does a similar thing for me to the nature-themed games, in that it's kind of more calm and chill and beautiful. In instances like Starving Artists, I'm literally getting to look at, really famous works of art throughout the course of the game, and that kind of just makes me happy. Like, I'm a person who can go into an art museum and spend a really long time just standing and staring at things. I really like paintings and works of art and sculptures and things like that. So, yeah, art-themed games hit me just right. I love them so much. So that is why my number 3 is art.
And I just realized that Starving Artist could fit under my crafting category, because you're making the art in that one.
I mean, yeah, that and Kanagawa technically would also.
I haven't played Kanagawa, so.
Oh, okay. So would Sagrada also count for that? Because you're
maybe,
making
but
a
that was
stained
more
glass window?
abstract.
Yeah, it's pretty abstract. I almost mentioned Azul, which technically fits, but it's so abstract.
Yeah. All right, my number 2 is time travel. So one of my favorite games is Tragedy Looper, which has a time travel theme, and I think that works pretty well with the theme. But it's also like a deduction game. You're trying to like figure out what you need, like why things are happening. But there are other games that have time travel that I didn't like as much, but I still am always interested when a game has time travel. So like, even though it seems like I don't tend to like games that have time travel in general, except for Tragedy Looper, I think a game having time travel makes me go, ooh, this might be cool.
So wait, have you played Anachrony?
Yes, I have. And I liked it, but not because of the time travel. It didn't feel like time travel to me. The time travel was more like alone, and I like time travel where you can go back in time like multiple times. So I guess time stories
in theory would work.
Yes.
And
so like I did like it at first.
Yes.
But yeah, like Anachrony didn't feel like time travel, and I actually won without time traveling at all. So
Time Stories was the epic the long con, man. They got us hooked into this system and kept me buying. I didn't even buy most of them. My friend bought most of the expansions, so I'm not even like.
Yeah, so like I think there aren't enough games about time travel because it's only like a couple there, and the Time Stories is.
I think that's a theme that's probably very difficult to pull off mechanically. Yeah. But there's a lot of room to play around in that. Yeah. For the record, even though it really doesn't feel like time travel, I know you do like some trick-taking games, so when you get a chance, definitely play Time Chase, because it is really fun.
That's on my want to play list too, I think, because time travel theme.
Yeah, it doesn't really, but I mean, just the fact that you can go back and change tricks in a trick-taking game that were already completed is... I was like, how does this even work? And it works so well. I love it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's my number 2, time travel.
My number 2 will probably not surprise anyone, although it might surprise you that it's not my number 1. My number 2 is space! So, y'all know I love Battlestar Galactica, but it isn't just IP-based space games that have my heart. There are a lot of really good space-themed games. You've got stuff like Quantum, which has really interesting dice mechanisms. Gravwell, which is technically a race game. Race for the Galaxy, which is really, really fun and complex in the best ways. Stellar Leap, which is a short 4X game. And of course, Star Trek Ascendancy. You know, I gotta throw the Star Trek game in there. But I have always gravitated, not just in games, but in my whole life, things themed or set in space, sci-fi, that kind of stuff, I love. So I just always, if I see a new game that's set in space, I'm interested. And obviously, this is also a category where there are lots of games, so there's lots of stuff I haven't tried. I have stuff in my own collection that I'm really interested in that is space-themed and I haven't played yet. So... I'm lucky in that I love this theme and there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to complain about a lack of games in the space theme, but I'm very happy that I love them, so that is why my number 2 is space!
Yay! My number 1 is Lord of the Rings. So, originally I wasn't thinking of putting this on the list, but then I was thinking maybe I could put fantasy as a theme, but then really it's just Lord of the Rings.
I mean, hey, that's what you gotta do.
And I was going over with Toby like what my list was, and then he was like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings is your number 1, definitely. I was like, what? Really? He's like, yeah, when it's Lord of the Rings, you want to get it. But he doesn't like it as much. So there's War of the Ring, which I liked, but Toby didn't like. Oh, I also had... when I was in high school, Lord of the Rings Monopoly, Lord of the Rings Risk, Lord of the Rings Backgammon. Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit.
Hold on. We're gonna just pause for a second. Okay, the Monopoly, the Risk, the Trivial Pursuit, those all make sense to me. Backgammon is the one I'm struggling with. How in the world was there a themed backgammon?
I actually still have that one.
I want to see it.
Yeah, the pieces, like the little checker pieces or whatever they're called, they're rings. And it's gold and silver, which is kind of hard to tell apart.
But is there anything else other than the fact that it's just a backgammon set themed? Like Lord of the Rings with rings?
It's just backgammon, but it just has like rings on it. I think it has a map on the board part.
The day this episode releases, please tweet a picture of this. Okay. I want to see it. Yeah, I want to see.
Yeah, so, but then there's games that have come out since then that are better, like Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth, which we bought, and haven't been able to play that. I still want to play that one. Yeah. Yeah, so... and then there were like a bunch of other Lord of the Rings games that I want just because they're Lord of the Rings, or I want to play just because of the Lord of the Rings. And even if they're not necessarily that good, and then we end up getting rid of them, or like Toby doesn't like them, then. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, I always want to play them. So that's my number 1 theme.
My number 1, the thing that beat out space on my list, is adventure. I love going on an adventure. I don't really care how that takes shape in a game, but I want to explore, I want to discover things, I want to get story. Like, I love going on an adventure. Some of my very favorite games, like Runebound, Legacy of Dragonholt, Near and Far, the newly released Forgotten Waters, they're all based around adventuring. I will say that most of the adventure games that I've played or that I see are often kind of generic fantasy themed. And I don't necessarily mind generic fantasy, but I do wish there were more pure adventure games that were not fantasy themed. There are some. I would actually even like classify something like Tokaido as an adventure game to some degree. That's a little bit of a stretch, but you're going on a journey through Japan and you're stopping at different locations and collecting items. So I think it kind of fits. It's obviously like not the best example of an adventure. There's no story. The other games I named first are definitely what I think of first with this theme, but I love it so much. I want more interesting stories in board games. And even if that means I only can play a certain thing a certain number of times, you know, because I'll know the story and then I'm done with it, that's fine. I don't tend to replay games 100 times anyway, so that's kind of perfect for me, to be honest. Designers, please make more adventure games. Also, Nikki Valens, if you're listening to this, please, I know you don't work for Fantasy Flight anymore, but Legacy of Dragonholt is one of the best things ever, and I want another game like that, please. So that is my number 1, adventure. We would love to hear from you all. What themes do you love in games? Please go to our Board Game Geek Guild or our Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and let us know what themes you love in games, especially if it's one we didn't mention today. We would love to hear from you and what you love, and maybe you'll help us discover something else that we want to check out in the near future.
And that's it for this week's Board Game Blitz. Visit our website, boardgameblitz.com, for video and blog content, as well as to get links to all our social media pages. This episode was sponsored by Grey Fox Games. You can now pre-order For Science, a real-time game about working together to save the world from disease. And you can take 20% off your order of all non-exclusive items sold at greyfoxgames.com by entering the promo code BLITZFANS at checkout. Crystal and I suggest you grab Deception Murder in Hong Kong and Champions of Midgard. Grey Fox Games. Quality games cleverly crafted. Did you know you can support our show and get cool perks for as little as $1 a month? Become a patron to listen to unedited episodes and join our private Slack channel, which lets you chat with us and other Blitzketeers directly. Head to patreon.com/boardgameblitz to become a patron today. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Morrow. Technical support provided by Toby Mao. Board Game Blitz is part of the Dice Tower Network. Until next time, no one can get in the way of me, I'm winning. Bye everyone!
Bye! Humble Bumble. Humble. I said Humble Bumble. And it is published. Take it. Usurped adventure in my list. Oh gosh, no. What is wrong with me? I'm starting over. I'm starting that over. Okay.